Cincinnati Zoo Tales. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Mark. Thanks to everyone out there for tuning in for another episode. Jenna, today we're focusing on the garden side of the Cincinnati Zoo Botanical Garden.
Yes, we don't highlight that quite enough.
I know, it gets kind of brushed under the rug, but we're here to shine some light on it. We're being joined by Megan Philpott. Megan is a Ph.D. and postdoc scientist at our CREW, the Center for Research of Endangered Wildlife. She's a conservation scientist there, so we know you're extremely busy. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and meet with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you guys. I'm excited.
And smart. Whenever we have the CREW people on, I'm like intimidated because you guys are so intelligent.
No, we need to button up today, Jenna. We gotta be a little more professional today.
But yeah, thanks for coming, and we have a lot to talk about, but we always try and start off like asking our guests, how did they get to the job they are at? Like, especially as a scientist working with endangered plants, like, half the time we don't even know that these jobs exist and we work here. So tell us about your job, how you got there, how you were interested in plants or that sort of thing.
Yeah. I have like a really weird backstory, so I'm just going to go
best.
over it. When I started going to college, I really wanted to go into fashion design. And so I went to school for 3 years for fashion design and did all these jobs. And, we would intern, and I would go on the internships, and I'd be like, I hate this. This is awful.
That's what college is for, right?
That's the best part about internships.
Yeah.
I know. And so I would, go walking in the forest, and I'd be like, what do I want to do with my life? This is so stressful. I'm, 3 years into college. I can't be having these thoughts. And, I was like, I like being here in the forest. Mm-hmm. And so I just, blew everything up, changed my major to biology, and I tried to get into, plant science as much as I could, working with different professors, wheedling my way into their offices, working in their labs. And then when I graduated, I had the opportunity to go to grad school while working here at CREW at the zoo. And it was so cool. It was like science fiction to me. We're doing what?
You're right.
Yeah.
That's always my question. What?
Because, a lot of what we do is crazy. We're growing, rare plants in test tubes, which is so sci-fi, and we're, freezing plants in cryopreservation. I heard of cryopreservation as, that's what Walt Disney did with his head, right? We're doing it with plants. That's awesome.
Yes.
So I just, got in here in grad school, and I just, planted.
What year was that?
I started grad school in 2013.
Okay.
And then I graduated in 2018 and started as a postdoc, which is a postgraduate training program. And then I held on for dear life and stuck around. I'm still here.
Yeah, you've been here for a while. I feel like I did that too. It's nope, I'm going to take whatever
staying.
I can get.
I'm not going anywhere. So when you were 3 years into your fashion design, did you have to do another 4 years of biology, or how much did that overlap?
I was big borrowing and stealing. I was taking classes over the summer. I think I took an entire year of physics and an entire year of organic chemistry in one summer,
one
3-month session.
Miserable.
It
that's
was.
You were dedicated.
The worst summer ever. Oh my gosh.
It was not good. Did I learn much? No.
Yeah, right. I don't really know what I learned in college either.
Check that box.
I shouldn't say that out loud.
Yeah, I feel the same way, but I got through it in 2 years, so.
That's awesome. Good for you. So
Yeah,
when you
some
came here, were
dedication.
you did you know what you were signing up for, or was it one of those things where you just learn as you go through grad school, or did you
I never have any idea what I'm doing, barely. So I'm just always careening off into one direction and trying to figure it out as I go. So I had like I said, I had no idea. I had this idea in my mind of I want to save plants. I want to do plant conservation. But I didn't know what that actually meant.
Okay, yes, that's what I would want to know.
And so it's been a lot of learning on the go. And the cool thing about the work that we're doing is that I feel I never feel complacent. I never feel I totally 100% understand what I'm doing and I feel confident. But I like that feeling. That's fun. It's fun to figure things out constantly. Yes. So yeah, I never know what I'm doing.
There's always a new challenge to take on.
That's a better way to put it. Sure.
Yeah, that's always exciting. I'm curious, when you guys are at CREW kind of deciding what you're going to work on, is that a decision that you get to make through your research, or is it kind of a decision made with higher ups in mind of these projects we want to work on, or is it a little bit of both maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit of both. So we're really specialized in the work that we're doing, and there aren't a lot of people, there aren't a lot of people in the United States that are doing this kind of conservation work. There aren't a lot of people in the world that are. And so a lot of times agencies will reach out to us and say, we have this plant and we're having trouble growing it. So we focus primarily on what we call exceptional species. So if you think about plants, when we're talking about plant conservation, the gold standard of plant conservation is saving things in their habitat. That's like the gold standard of any conservation,
yes.
right? You want to like protect the habitat. But that's so hard to do, in practice. It's expensive. It sometimes is just, like, not even a possibility. And so ex situ conservation, like zoos, we're taking the animals or the plants out of their habitat and we're conserving them somewhere else where we can keep them a little safer and have a little more control over them. For plants, a lot of the time, they're kind of easy because they produce seeds and you can just, like, throw those in a freezer and, like, that plant is, like, preserved forever. But exceptional species, you can't seed bank them. So they're, like, the weirdos, kind of, right?
Okay.
They're the ones that tend to fall through the cracks. They're hard to work with. They require specialized knowledge. They are more expensive to work with a lot of the time, and so people will just kind of, like, work around them and, like, be like, well, somebody else will catch that one. I'm going to, like, get all the easier plants to work with. And so when somebody comes across one of those plants at a management agency, a lot of the times they'll, like, call us and be like, please help. We need some help with this guy. So that's, like, a lot of, like, the projects that we work with. But we also do a lot of our own grant writing and direct our own projects. So right now we have a grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services that's allowing us to just, like, delve into oak conservation for 3 full years. And it is really fun, and I'm learning a ton about oaks as we do it. So all oaks are exceptional species, so we can't seed bank any oaks. There's just, like, no backup seed bank for oaks. So we think of them as, like, this super ubiquitous tree. Mm-hmm. But if something came and wiped them all out tomorrow, like, we don't have a backup.
Wow.
That's scary to think about.
I didn't want to interrupt you because you were just like, sharing. No. I didn't want to interrupt you because you're sharing such good information. I love how you explained, like, ex situ conservation and how that works. And I think it's a really good point to make. And that was one of my questions I wanted to ask you about and have you explain to the listeners what seed banking is exactly.
Yeah.
You made it sound super simple, but tell us a little bit more about seed banking. And then I have more questions.
Yeah, it can be super simple. So, like, people can do it in their own house. For a lot of plants, you can go collect the seed, so wait until the seeds are ripe, which is usually like when the fruit gets like nice and dry and papery for a lot of seeds, or the fruit is ripe. Whatever it is, you go and collect them when the seeds are ready, and then you dry them down because you want to get as much moisture out of those seeds as possible, because moisture is going to, number one, mold if they stick around for too long, and number two, moisture and like water inside of your cells lets your cells keep like working and moving. And seeds, when we want to seed bank them and keep them for a long time, we want to stop that metabolism as much as possible.
Also really interesting, but they're still, I don't know if this is the correct word, but alive. Like, so you dry them out so the cells stop working, but they're still alive. Like, that's interesting.
They just need, you
like
give them a little more
almost,
water,
right?
and they're like, all right, we're going to get up again. I'll start
Nature's just
making
incredible.
a tree. Whatever. So then once they're dried down, then because there's no water in there, you can throw them in a freezer, and that prolongs, freezers prolong all kinds of things for a long time, right? And so the other reason that you want to dry things down in seed banking before you freeze them is that when you freeze water, it forms ice crystals and they're like pokey.
Oh, yes.
And so if you think about like taking a piece of celery that's like super crunchy and delicious and you throw it in your freezer and you take it out again, it's still a piece of celery, but it's going to be like mush, right? And that's because it was full of water. All those cells were full of water, and when the water froze, they just formed these ice crystals that poked all of the delicate little cell membranes, and all the good stuff in the cells flowed right out, and it doesn't have any structure anymore. So you're trying to prevent that from happening too by drying down the seeds. So then, once they're in the freezer, usually they can survive. Some seeds can survive for hundreds of years. We have, like, doomsday seed vaults, like, up in, like, permafrost.
I've heard of this before, yeah.
Yeah, that we can just, like, dry down these seeds and put them there, and they're, like, good. They're fine forever.
Incredible.
But then the exceptional plants are the ones that you can't do that with. So sometimes an exceptional plant, they don't produce seeds. So if there's no seeds, then you can't seed bank them. Sometimes that drying or that freezing is really not amenable to the plant surviving,
Okay.
right? So oak trees, they produce acorns, that's fine, but then you can't dry those acorns down.
Okay.
And so that's where this alternative method has to come into play.
When you say a seed doesn't have a plant doesn't have a seed, what? Can you give us an example? How does it
How's it propagate?
Yes.
Yeah, like
Well, sometimes, like, naturally, like, things like, ferns and mosses, they propagate by spores.
like spores, yeah, okay.
So
that makes
sometimes,
sense.
naturally, they don't have seeds. Sometimes, we work with, one of our past grants was working with Hawaii, and, like, plants in Hawaii are on, like, another plane of existence level threatened that, like, you can't even conceive of, and one of the species that we work with there's 3 plants left in the wild. Like, literally 3 individuals. So sometimes when they get down to, like, such a low amount of individuals, they just can't, like, reproduce and produce seeds anymore. There's not enough genetic diversity left in the population. Sometimes something happens to the pollinator. That's happening more and more. Like, pollinators are going extinct, or climate change is causing habitats to shift. And so the pollinators aren't matching up with the plant habitat anymore. And if they don't have a pollinator, they can't get pollinated, they can't produce fruit and seeds.
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Somebody might be asking, like, what does it matter if those 3 plants in Hawaii disappear? Like, do you have an answer or a thought about that?
Yeah, I have, like, multiple tiers of answers to that question.
Let's hear it.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
Depending on how, like, into conservation you already are. The bottom tier is that plants provide a lot of, like, good to us. There are medicines, there are food, we build our houses with plants, and so if we let all of these plants go extinct, especially before we really know anything about them, then Valerie, our director, likes to say it's like throwing your Christmas presents away before you open them. Like, you don't know what you're missing. That's like the very baseline answer, right? Mm-hmm. The next level up is that ecosystems are really, like, complex and difficult to model things, and so we don't really know what's going to happen if we take one species out of it. Like, it could be a total cascade effect of like things failing down the line. My very top answer, and like why I believe it, is like, we save them because they exist. You know what I mean?
I love that. I love you. You're like
That
one
should
of
be
my
all
favorite
it takes,
guests already.
right? That should be all it takes.
You're so passionate and smiley. I wish you all could see her. I love it.
We just, like, there's, like, an incredible amount of biodiversity on Earth, and, like, you walk out even in, like, the middle of the city, and, like, you'll see all kinds of different birds and insects and trees and flowers, and it's mind-boggling, and, like, we should just keep those existing because they exist, and it's awesome.
Yes, I agree. I love that answer.
Yes, all life has the right to exist, right?
Yeah.
So, the exceptional plants, how do people decide? So they're the ones that you guys are working with. Mm-hmm. How do people notice or decide that these plants are disappearing? If there's, if you go in the forest and you still see 50 oaks, like, who's paying attention that 10 years ago? Or do you, like, that's a big question. But
that
how
is
are
a
people
really big
noticing
question.
These plants are disappearing?
I mean, sometimes we don't. Like, that's the scary thing, right? Sometimes, like, a plant will, like, go extinct, or a population will decline to the point of extinction, and, like, we just don't notice until it's gone. Now, a lot of state agencies will go out and, like, monitor these plants. So, like, thank God for our state botanists, because they are, like, keeping tabs on all of these plants for us.
I didn't know that was a job either.
State botanist, there you go.
That's like a dream job. And the other scary thing is, how do we know plants are exceptional, like, in seed banks? Because it's one thing if a plant isn't producing seeds, like, obviously it's going to be exceptional.
Right.
The other scary thing is that sometimes a seed, you can dry it down, you can freeze it, you can put it in a seed bank, and it works for a while. Like, it will survive in a seed bank for 1 year or 5 years or 10 years. We assume when we put those seeds in there that they're going to survive for hundreds of years. And so we need to take seeds out every so often and test them for germination. And what we're finding more and more is that a lot of the seeds that we banked and we thought were seed bankable actually, like, are very short-lived in that storage.
So basically there's an expiration date on it. Okay.
And that's such a long game because, you wait a year. Let's just pick a sunflower, right? So let's say you seed bank a sunflower seed and you check it at a year, but then you have to pull it out and grow the sunflower,
Yeah.
right? So, or it may not grow, or you check it at 5 years, and
Yeah.
then you just, like, it's not like you can just pull it out and test it, right? You have to, like,
Yeah.
plant it, and then wait for it to, that's, like, patience.
And you have to test it enough that you can, like, find out that they're starting to decline before all of the seeds that you have banked are dead.
Oh, yes, that's smart.
And, like, the more that we're doing this and being aware of these issues, when we first coined the term exceptional plants, we coined it because it was like they're the exception to the rule. There's now, like, so many species we're finding fall into this category that they start to have that expiration date in a seed bank, that actually the plants that can be seed banked are becoming the exception to the rule.
Wow.
Which is, like, scary.
What a
So it's
bummer.
flipped. It's
Yeah.
completely flipped.
Yeah, it is.
Oh my gosh. So I'm so thankful we have people like you that are figuring all of this out. So I was reading your project. I don't know if I do not even expect you to know the title. It was like 5 pages long. Not really. It's
Yeah.
like a full sentence long. The
really
project
long.
title. Do you know it? Can you tell us? Do you know the short
No.
version? It's so long.
It's like building the oak seed bank or cryo bank. It's something like that.
Yes, I
should know
something
that.
about oaks. Well, I didn't really expect you to because it was so long. But did somebody reach out to you guys about the oaks? I didn't realize oaks were endangered, or like
Yeah.
what made you guys start this project? And you received a grant for it, correct?
Yeah. So we have a 3-year grant for it. We've been working with oaks for like a long time for a couple reasons. Like, I think something like 40% of our oak species in the United States are threatened in some way. So, like, there are some scary things happening. And there's scary things on the horizon. Like, there's a disease called sudden oak death, which,
my
like,
gosh.
could not be, like, more, like,
As dramatic as can be.
I
Like, that
know.
is scary.
sudden oak death. So that is thankfully on the West Coast only right now, but, like, it's probably coming our way.
What is causing that?
Usually it's just a pathogen or a fungus, or so this happens to trees, like, fairly often now, that gets imported on accident, like either through lumber that comes from some other part of the world, or like horticultural species, and then it jumps to our native
okay.
species. And our native species just have never experienced it. It's totally novel, and it just, like, hits them like a train.
And is there anything you can do? You know, animals, we can give medication or try and figure something out. Is if somebody catches that they have sudden death, what is it? Sudden oak death disease. Is there anything you can do at that point, or is it by the time you notice it, it's?
I mean, so it depends. It depends. There's a lot of different. There's a lot of different approaches you can take. It depends on, like, when you catch things. And so, for example, the ash trees, which are being attacked right now in our forests by emerald ash borer, you can treat those. Like, you can kind of, like, pump the trees full of, like, the anti-emerald ash borer.
Okay.
But you have to treat them, like, every single year. It's really expensive. You have to keep up with it. And, like, that's fine. Like, my parents do it to an ash tree they really love in their front yard.
Aw.
But, like,
It's not viable for an entire forest.
yeah, you're not going to be
right?
doing it in
Yeah.
our forests, right?
Yeah.
And so it kind of depends. And one example I like to bring up a lot is the American chestnut tree. So that used to be completely ubiquitous, like, dominated so many of our forests, just chestnuts all over the place, right? And then in the 1900s, a fungus was imported on accident, and it just wiped them out. Like, immediately just spread like wildfire through all of these. And so this tree that we thought was, like, the main, most common tree in our forest, all of a sudden, they're gone. They're 100% gone.
Wow.
And something like that could hit oaks. So we
Yeah.
think, you know, I see red oaks all over the place. They're not, like, endangered, but we don't know it's coming.
Okay. So it's like preparation. They're not necessarily, I mean, there's a 40% decrease in a lot of the species you said, or the different types of oaks.
Yeah.
And is a lot of that due to habitat loss currently, or?
So much of it, yeah, a lot of it is due to habitat loss. So, like, oaks like to live where we like to, like, build our houses and everything. That's a major problem. Climate change is becoming a bigger and bigger issue. So a lot of, like, this is an issue for everything, right? Like, our habitats are kind of getting pushed north with climate change. And it's one thing for that to happen to, like, animals or insects that, like, have legs generally
Right.
and can move. That can't happen for a lot of, like, especially long-lived trees. Like,
Yeah.
if their habitat moves north, they're, like, staying put, you know, and just either weathering the storm or not. So that's something that's happening. There's one species of plant, it's a little flower that we work with, that people have done like climate change modeling on its populations and to see where it was going to move north. And it moved north straight into Lake Erie.
Oh my god!
So there's nowhere else to go for it.
I mean, it's just like gone, you know?
Which is also incredible that like that could be seen and people studied that. I don't know why it blows my mind that people are watching wild plants can actually
like their movement patterns.
Yes,
quote,
do you know
unquote.
why?
They're
Like
obviously
it's
not
too
moving,
big of
but-
a picture for
Yeah.
me to comprehend, I guess. And,
I think
like,
it's crazy too.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's very mathy and cool.
yeah, totally. Very mathy. So, do you want to tell us about your project and what you're doing and what you're doing instead of
Yeah.
seed banking?
Yeah, so this is a really cool project because we partnered with all of these different like arboreta and botanical gardens across the United States and Canada, and we have some partners in Mexico, so it's kind of like a North American thing. And we got them to agree somehow to go out and collect shoots from a couple different trees that we're interested in every single year in spring for 3 years. So they're going to go out to the exact same tree every spring for 3 years and then send those shoots to us.
Okay.
Then we try to get them into tissue culture. So we try to grow them in test tubes so that we can ultimately cryopreserve them. Usually growing them in test tubes is kind of our first step because we specialize in what we call shoot tip cryopreservation. Cryopreservation, I'll back up, is the storage of like plant seeds and tissues in liquid nitrogen. So when we're seed banking, we're throwing things in like a freezer, like your normal freezer at home. That's like 0 degrees Fahrenheit, right? It's pretty cold. Mm-hmm. Things will freeze. Liquid nitrogen is like negative 320 degrees Fahrenheit. It's like so much colder.
So much
It's
colder.
like instantaneous frozen.
Yeah, it really is. It's
Yeah.
like, it's frozen. So we're using that cryopreservation for a couple of reasons. Number one, so when you put something in the freezer and you freeze it, it takes it a while to freeze, right? So it takes a while to freeze and it gets in its danger zone where it forms ice crystals.
Oh, yeah.
Liquid nitrogen is so cold that it freezes instantly and we bypass that ice crystal formation and like the water and liquid inside of the cells becomes like a glass. So instead of like all these pokey ice crystals that are like poking up your cells and like letting all the good stuff rush out, you have this nice like glass that then you can just keep them nice and happy in your bank.
Interesting.
Indefinitely. So we're ultimately trying to do that with oaks, and you can do that with acorns. That's one option. Another option is to take the little tiny growing buds. So if you like look at a plant, usually you can see, especially in the springtime, the bud is like where things start to grow. Like it's what becomes green and starts growing really long. And so those tiny little buds actually contain the plant's stem cells, which is crazy,
What?
right?
Yes.
So they contain these cells like on the very top that are basically undifferentiated. They can become any sort of plant cell. They can become a leaf cell, or they can become a stem, or like they can, stem.
I was about to bring that up, but yes.
Yes, they can become a root cell. And so we can kind of like exploit that and like harvest those tiny little stem cells, cryopreserve them, and then we can pull them back out whenever we need them and grow a whole plant from them. So that's kind of what we're doing with
That's
oaks.
incredible.
Yes, how does somebody figure that out? And then what do you mean you pull them out and how do you determine that for them? Like, is that something you can answer? So
It's like how do we recover them from cryo?
yes, and then decide if you want it to be a root, or do you not do that,
That was
or
my
do you
question,
just automatically
yeah.
make it a root so that it can grow into a tree?
That's like the cool part. That's the other cool part of us using tissue culture or growing them in test tubes. So when we grow them in test tubes, they don't grow in soil in the test tube. They're actually growing in what we call like plant jello. And so it's got it's got what plants crave. It's like got this gel base that keeps it solid, and then it's got all the sugar that they like, and then all the nutrients that they need. But then we can feed them different hormones. What? Because hormones are like the chemical messengers in your body, like that your brain sends out that are like, okay, you need to do this, you need to do that. And plants have the exact same thing. So we just like manipulate the hormones that they're taking up, and we're like, hey, you need to do like mostly make some shoots, but also maybe make a couple roots. Or we can like tell them to just produce roots. Or one project that I'm working on with the oaks, this is like very sci-fi, is that we can take the little tiny leaves, like as soon as they emerge, and put them on media with quite a few hormones and cause like it basically causes them to produce little embryos, like, out of the leaves. So the embryo is the little tiny, thing inside a seed that's going to grow into a whole plant. We can tell the leaves, like, hey, just start making a whole bunch of those for us, please. We could really use those.
Wow.
What?
What kind of media do
sci-fi.
you put it on to get it to...
There's so many different types of plant media.
Okay.
It's like kind of like a smorgasbord of different like nutrient. I mean, it's just like soil, right? So sometimes you have soil that has a lot more calcium in it, or sometimes you have soil that holds water really tightly. And so we can do the same thing with the media and just tell it, we need you to produce a lot more shoots because we're giving you a lot more of cytokinin, which is like a shoot hormone, or we need you to produce more roots.
How do you get the shoot hormones? How do you...
You isolate them from... You can isolate them from plants, and
you
actually...
can't see them, can you? How do you isolate a plant hormone?
So, some chemists much smarter than me will, basically extract them out of, the plant tissues. And the crazy thing about plant hormones is, we use them to grow. And people use them at home. You can buy a little bottle of powder called Rootone, which stands for rooting hormone. And if you, take a cutting of one of your houseplants and, dip the cut end into this rooting hormone, then you're like, oh my god, it's producing roots. This is great. I have a new plant.
Never knew this.
You're using rooting hormones too. But the other crazy thing is that too much of a hormone can make a plant go so crazy that it actually kills them. And so a lot of our herbicides are actually really high doses of plant hormones.
Oh.
Wow.
So Agent Orange, there's a lot of very bad things in that. But also the thing that was mostly killing the plants was a plant hormone. It was an auxin hormone.
This is so wild to me.
So when you're manipulating all of this stuff, are you doing it under a microscope?
Oh yeah, good question.
How are you?
Help us envision this.
What is what is your daily work desk life look like?
Well, because we're growing plants in test tubes and we're growing them on this medium that's got tons of sugar in it, plants love it, and fungi and bacteria love it too. So primarily we're working sterilely. We're working in these big giant boxes basically that are blowing sterile air at us, and then are blowing all the fungal spores and bacteria back towards my face.
Yeah, I was just gonna say right towards
but
you.
Away from the plant. And so we're usually working in a very clean situation like that. And when we're trying to get that tiny little bud that has all the stem cells in it, yeah, we're working under a microscope. Seriously, under a microscope all day, just trying to
a scalpel.
Yeah, a scalpel, and trying to get a 1 or 2 millimeter tiny bit of tissue.
And then it doesn't damage the cells enough to it's still.
If you're good at it.
Wow.
So you're basically a open heart surgeon for plants.
You're a plant surgeon.
This is amazing. Okay, this probably isn't important, but I just want to know, can you grow a plant without roots? Do you know what you were saying?
Yeah.
I thought roots. I feel so dumb every time we talk to someone from
this
Peru.
is so weird.
Yes,
It's not natural, right?
It's not natural.
How does it grow without roots? Just because it has direct the.
It doesn't need, because roots are there to stabilize the plant.
I thought they were what soaks up all
they soak
the
up
nutrients and stuff, but just a stem can also do the same thing.
Yeah, if you cut it and it has direct contact with this media, and it doesn't it has all the nutrients in the media, and it doesn't need any processing. They just go straight into the tissues, and we want it to produce lots of shoots because the shoots are where all the stem cells are. So we're always trying to be please don't make any roots right now.
Oh, okay.
This is not helpful for us.
Oh my gosh.
That's wild. So how many species of oak are you guys working with right now?
So for this particular project, we have 6 threatened species of oak, mostly from the southwestern United States, and then 2 common species that we added in as kind of a comparison of widespread species. So our common species are the bur oak, which everybody's seen around
I feel
here,
I see that.
and the red oak that are all over the place
over
here.
yeah.
So we're working with both common and endangered oaks. But we have tons, and I don't even know how many species of oaks we have growing in our greenhouse and growing in tissue culture just for other projects. We love oaks.
What do you do with them when they get bigger?
That's
plant them?
That's such a good question. So we have like big plans right now. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about this, but I'm going to talk about it because I'm manifesting this happening.
You heard it here first. You heard it here first.
Yeah. So we, like right now, we have just like a little hoop house behind Crew that we grow these oak trees in. But like we're running out of space. We're like a pretty small building. You know, we don't have like a massive greenhouse or anything. So we're conspiring with horticulture to plant out this like big, awesome oak grove out at Boyer Farm.
Yes.
Which is like where a lot of our native plants are being grown already. And we have like beautiful forests and wetlands out there. And it would just be like the perfect place to have this conservation grove of like so many cool oak species that people could then come and like see. People go out and hear oak and they think that's like one tree. You know what I mean? You're like, oak tree.
Yes, me too. me, I am one of them.
They're like one of the most diverse tree groups. There's so many different species of oak, and I think it would be so cool for somebody to come and be like, oh my god, there's oaks that are like shrubs. They get like 5 feet tall and they look like a little shrub that you would have outside of your house. And then there's like a giant like bur oak that grows super huge and tall. So that's like the dream that we're trying to make a reality.
So what would stop that dream from happening? Would it be like tons of work, or is it the space? I mean, I'll fight for it with you guys.
Yeah.
I want to say, whatever little influence Jen and I have around here, we're going to use our little influence to do it.
No, I think people here are getting really excited about it. Okay. I think it's really happening, and horticulture is really excited about it. We love working with horticulture. Like, that's like the best whenever we get to like do a project with them. And so it is just like, getting some extra space to like grow the trees, because we grow the trees in test tubes. They're like 2 inches big, and like horticulture is like, I don't want to even look at that tree until it's 3 feet tall. So we need something in like that interim to bridge the gap.
But that would be such a good way to show like how science gets put into practice too. If you go and see these groves of oaks that were literally born, so to speak, in test tubes. Like, that'd be amazing. Yeah.
Totally. And just like the botanic garden world is kind of starting to like take some pages out of the zoo world book. And so we're just starting to like dip our toes into like managing crosses and things like we do with managing breeding across zoos. And so one idea that's really becoming popular is the idea of a meta collection. And so it's the idea being that like no one garden has the space and the people to like grow all of the bur oaks for a collection in their garden. But like together we can, if like we agree to take, okay, we're going to take like X amount of bur oaks and grow them here, and then this garden is going to take another X amount, and then together that's like one conservation collection. So it's kind of like being part of a whole that's really cool in conservation.
Yeah, it's almost like our SSPs that we have with animals. Yeah,
we totally stole the SSP in the botanic garden world, and we were like, that's a good idea.
Yes.
Please do. I love it. If they can do good, that's awesome.
That is so cool. So you are using scalpels and slicing buds of different plants, but let's talk about the oaks for now. And then you move that to a media, and you put hormones on it, which someone much smarter than me figured out how to collect the hormones.
Someone much smarter than me, too.
And then what's the timeline from there to, like, seeing something? Or, like, when does it move to a test tube? Or is it put in the test tube immediately?
So when we're like trying to cryopreserve something, we'll isolate the tiny little buds, usually out of a test tube. And then we're trying to stop ice crystals from forming inside those cells. So one way that we do that is like by freezing them in liquid nitrogen really fast. The other way that we do that is by using what we call cryoprotectants. They're basically like plant antifreeze that we're like just like we submerge the plants in for a while. So it's got all kinds of things in it. It's got some stress hormone in it, so we're kind of being like, something stressful is going to happen, you might want to start preparing for it. And it's also got like a ton of sugar in it, because if a solution has like a bunch of sugar in it, then it doesn't freeze as much, like it's kind of different. But if you put alcohol in the fridge, it doesn't freeze, right? It's just like usually not enough water in it. If you have a low enough proof alcohol, it does start to freeze.
Yes.
So we're kind of trying to do the same thing with all kinds of like plant antifreezes. So basically from the time that we isolate it till the time that it's sitting in liquid nitrogen for potentially hundreds of years is 2 days.
Okay. So I guess I was thinking I forgot, like, you're actually taking these would you call them cells? Like when you slice it, what is that? What do you call that?
We call that a shoot tip.
A shoot tip. Okay. So you're putting that to cryopreserve it or with antifreeze. Which
Yeah.
is so crazy. And then only when you need more of them, then you will grow them to be the shoots or that sort of thing. Okay.
Yeah, so the nice thing, we can propagate things really quickly in test tubes because we're basically like cloning the plants. I mean, plants are very easy to clone because like you could just like take a cutting of a lot of houseplants and you have created a clone of that plant. We do the same thing, but we do it in test tubes, and so we can make lots of them very, very fast, which is nice for restoration projects, and we do that for partners a lot. So if somebody's like, I need a whole bunch of plants, I got to plant them back out in the wild, and I don't know how to do that, we got them because we can clone those plants. Here's a good example of that happening. I'm going off on a tangent.
No, I want to hear
it. I'm here for it.
So we work with a plant called the autumn buttercup, which is found in like this one tiny little population in Utah. And they wanted to do a restoration of it. So our partners, the Nature Conservancy, owned the land. We had partners out at some Utah universities, the Arboretum at Flagstaff. Everybody was like, we found a spot. Let's do a restoration. Let's plant these plants out. If we did the restoration with seeds, for every seed you grow one plant, right? And that plant is like a specific genotype. Just like I have a different genotype than you, have a different genotype than you. And so if that plant dies, that genotype is lost, is gone out of the population. We were able to take those and get them into tissue culture so that we could make like 20, 30, 40 of every single genotype. We have backups. So we did that. Then, we go through this process called acclimatization, which is like very difficult to get it from a test tube to the greenhouse.
I feel like we talked about that with...
Yeah, you probably talked to Mairead about it. That's her like specialization. She's like the master of it. It's so hard. I cannot do it. But she does it. And so they take all these plants now that they're growing in soil and they send them out to Utah and they're like, okay, let's plant them out. And they're like, you know what? There's a bunch of like hoofstock that are, grazing out here. We're going to build a fence so that deer and cow can't get in. And so we watch the plants. They're like doing great. And then all of a sudden they all like totally are obliterated. And we're like, what the heck happened? Voles came in and ate them because like nobody was like walking around grazing on it, and voles are like, wow, somebody like planted a salad bar for me. This is great. And if we had been using like seeds and seedlings like that, those are gone.
Wow.
They're out of the population forever. But we have backups. So we like did the whole thing again.
All over
Sent them
again.
hundreds of plants, the same plants again, and they're like, okay, we're gonna keep the voles out this time, and then it worked. But that's the kind of like experimentation with conservation and restoration that you couldn't do if you were in danger of like losing tons of an endangered species with your experiment. So it allows a lot more flexibility too.
So just a logistical standpoint, and I have a lot of other questions, but when I think of like cryopreservation, I mostly am familiar with like sperm, I feel like, and it goes in those big round...
Yeah.
They look like propane tanks almost.
Yeah.
But they don't have wide lids.
Yeah.
So how are you literally putting, like, what, when you have the, oh my gosh, you just told me the name. The shoot tip.
Yeah.
What is that in? How do you get it back out? How do you put it in and keep it from mixing with others?
Yeah.
Like, what is that process?
That's a good question. So they're basically like these big barrels filled with liquid nitrogen. And then, so the sperm, they usually like freeze them in little tiny straws, which I think is very cute. For us, we have like just like racks and racks and racks in there of boxes. And each box is filled with all these little vials.
So a box, I guess it's preserving seeds or plants. So,
oh yeah,
but it seems like it
similar.
should just like destroy. It's so cold. I feel like it would like destroy things you put in there, but that's not the case.
I mean, that's like borderline like one of my fears because like cryopreservation is kind of a new science. Like it's been a science that's been practiced since like the late 80s, early 90s maybe, and we are theorizing that plants and cells can survive in liquid nitrogen for like hundreds to thousands of years. And we're just, like, assuming, like, well, this plastic box is going to make it. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's one of the things that keeps me up at night.
So it is, like, in a plastic box.
Yeah, in a little plastic vial.
Okay.
I mean, they've
so
survived for, like, over 30 years. They're doing okay so far. Yeah.
Then in a box. And is it safe? Like, are you nervous working with it? Like,
I mean,
do you stick your arm in there? Do you, like...
Oh, I suit up. I suit up. I have like tons of protective gear because it's like negative 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Like it will burn you.
Yes,
it's
so that's
cold.
like
I've got like the goggles on. I've got like my gloves on. Usually, sometimes if I'm banking a lot, I get relaxed about it, and I'll be down there in flip-flops, and Elizabeth is our OSHA person, and she will be like, what are you doing? Like, I don't know.
So do you, like, reach in with the gloves, or do you have, like, little tools that pull out these boxes, or are you mostly just putting in? Like, how often are you pulling? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I'm thinking of stacking, for an ease. Let's say you have a purple box, a green box, a blue box, an orange box, and you need the purple box at the bottom, or whatever order I just did. Do you ever do that, or are they just staying down there?
Oh yeah, they're in these racks that we can like pull out boxes without like reorganizing everything.
I guess I need to see one of these.
You should come over sometime.
I say this every time too. Really. Yes,
we'll do a video or something.
Okay, I'm imagining it like being a screw top opening, and it's like all down.
It just like pops right out.
Oh, the whole thing comes out.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about that, like, temperature change.
Yes, you do. So that's one of the scary things is that, another thing that keeps me up at night, is that when you pull these out, you pull out a whole rack of, like, 8 boxes at one time. And for, like, 2 seconds, just enough time for you to get the box that you need and transfer it to liquid nitrogen, you put the box back in. But, like, that's technically a micro thaw. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we try to, like, avoid doing that. We try to have, like, some where we're actively taking things in and putting things out, or vice versa. And we have some that are just, like, long-term storage. They're going to stay there. We're not even going to, like, open the tank or anything.
That makes sense.
But we're not trying to, like, we are trying to keep things there for the future, like, for safety purposes. But we want people to use the plants that are in here. Like, we don't want to just, like, keep everything in here forever and never, like, take it out for any use. Like, we want to be doing restorations with them or experiments. Like, we want them to be used. So we do take things out. Here's an example of that.
Yeah.
So, do you remember when the corpse flower bloomed a couple years ago?
Yes.
It was like a sensation.
I mean, I came and waited in line to see it. Yes.
People were in love with Morticia. So, everybody had this really cool idea that, like, that I think it was the hornbills, one of the hornbill birds, like, eats corpse flower fruit in the wild. And so they were like, great, let's pollinate it and get it to produce the fruit, and then they'll eat it, and then we'll get the seeds, and it's going to be really cool. We didn't have any corpse flower pollen on hand, obviously, so we called up Chicago Botanical Garden, and we were like, can you, like, overnight us some? Like, no problem. They overnight it. UPS loses it.
I think I heard this story. It was I wish we would have done
I have not
on
heard this part.
It was like a nightmare. We, like, horticulture is like, you what? It's gone. So it was, like, totally gone. So, Mairead and Ed from horticulture and I, like, go there in the middle of the night to that education building, and Ed, like, cuts a little tiny square out of this flower away from where the public can see it because it's, like, the beloved Morticia, you know what I mean? And
I didn't know this part.
He's, like, in there, like, I have such a good video of this. He's in there, like, looking through this tiny hole with a toothbrush, like, scrubbing the pollen off of this plant and, like, putting it in foil so we can take it back to the lab and cryopreserve it. Because the next time that corpse flower blooms, I want us to have pollen here on hand. I don't want to have to, like, wait for UPS. So that is something that is banked, but it is, like, it's coming out of there eventually. That pollen is going to come out, and we're going to use it to pollinate the next Morticia whenever she pops up.
Morticia the second.
And I'll probably leave some in there, like, for good, but it's slated to come out. We're using the stuff that's in the bank.
So wait, when you ship this stuff, is it in, like, a special container so that it stays cold and, like, doesn't warm up?
So when they shipped us the corpse flower pollen, it wasn't cryopreserved. People aren't really, like, doing cryopreservation that often. Like, people don't really have the capabilities. And a lot of stuff, like, it'll last a couple years. They have enough corpse flowers that they go through their pollen quick enough, but we don't. So I wanted to cryopreserve it because...
Okay.
But we do ship things in liquid nitrogen, and we have these things called dry shippers, which are basically like little mini liquid nitrogen tanks that we keep things in. So things can stay in liquid nitrogen in either the liquid or the vapor. Even the vapor of liquid nitrogen is very cold. So if you ever see someone, like, messing around with liquid nitrogen, it's got all this, like, white smoke that's
This is the same thing as dry ice, right? Or are those different things?
They're different things. Dry ice is carbon dioxide.
Oh, okay.
And liquid nitrogen is nitrogen.
And is it much colder too? Okay.
It is much colder than dry ice, but we also use dry ice, which is like fun to play with.
I know. I just
All these
remember
things
that
are really
from
fun
like
to play
5th
with.
grade science projects using dry ice, but I clearly don't know anything about it.
But yeah, we have dry sugar. We'll just like send like a tiny little tank of liquid nitrogen out to keep things cold.
Who makes the call on when you start doing restoration? Like, is that somebody who's just like, we're ready, or we found the spot, like you mentioned before, or is it like you're working on a project for 5 years and you're like, okay, we hit this point, now let's take them out and go plant them?
We try to, like, our philosophy is that we do the preserving and the propagating really well, and we leave the land managing to the land managers because they know those plants. Like, they know the plants that they're working with. So we defer to them. We defer to them usually if they need help propagating or preserving something, they'll come to us. And they'll come to us when they're ready for it to come out as well. So we're working on a project with horticulture again right now on the Kentucky clover, which is this like newly described to science species of clover. Like, you would have no idea if you saw it. You would be like, that's a white clover, I'm gonna step on that.
Yeah, that's what also amazes me is when someone's paying enough attention to notice that and they notice
discover a new species. Yeah,
I've like seen it and I'm just like, are you sure? I'm like, that just is a normal clover, right? But like, we're producing, they were like, we want to do a restoration with this, we need more plants, and we were like, great, we'll take the plant, we'll give you the plants, you do whatever you want with them, like, you go nuts. So we try to be like one part of a team for conservation.
Very cool.
Yeah, but it takes all those organizations and all those like different sides of conservation to work together to actually make a successful
It's
product.
even more special, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like we're all like working in support of like protecting habitats. Like that's the gold standard. That's what we need to be doing. But like we need to do some extra things too.
Yes. So you've shared so much cool information, but I always have the hardest time like understanding literally what you do on a daily basis. And so I kind of started asking that. And you're spending a lot of time like, well, is that true? Are you spending a lot of time like cutting these shoot tips, or what does your day look like on it? Or is it different every day?
It's different every day, which is one thing I really like about it. So like right now we're kind of we're coming up to the end of our like slow season. So I'm spending a lot of time like analyzing data and writing papers. I just like submitted a paper that immediately got rejected. You know, you have a lot of rejection in this. It's fine, brush yourself off. And then in the spring and summer is when things like really ramp up. So soon, probably in March, our partners are going to start sending us these shoots that we're trying to get into tissue culture. And those days are crazy. We're like making the media. We have to be prepared. We have to like, I'm like going and hovering and purchasing, like waiting for like yes, man, to like snatch things away from him, like run these plants down so that they don't like spend too long in a box, you know? And then we sterilize them because, again, we have to work really clean because we don't want any of those fungus. Fungus will just, like, take over. It can grow so much faster than a plant. And so we want to, like, get rid of that.
How do you sterilize them?
Just with bleach.
What?
You just, like, soak them in bleach.
I would think that would be horrible for them.
For, long enough time.
Okay.
It will. Okay. We do, like, 5 to 10 minutes in some bleach, and, like, it kills the, like, buggies on it, but it doesn't kill the plant, usually.
Interesting.
Usually. But, like, those seasons are, like, crazy. And then sometimes we'll go out and do collecting. So we'll go out in the field and actually collect things. Usually more locally. I used to do more. Pre-COVID, I did a lot more traveling.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't we all? Yeah. So
it's
when you get these shipments of shoots in the spring, is that more exciting or is it more stressful? Because I'm sure there's a lot of pressure. You're probably working extra hours.
It's both.
But it's a little bit of both. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's really stressful, but like it's also really fun. Like the days go by really fast, and you know, it's a collaborative effort. It's like all hands on deck. So it's just like a bunch of us hanging out in the lab, like doing the exact same thing, and it's usually really fun. Days like today, I'll just like be holed up in my office like a little gremlin, like typing on a computer, and I'm not very social. So I really look forward to like the more collaborative things.
So you'll have this grant for 3 years. You'll be working on this project for 3 years. What are you hoping to accomplish by the 3rd year? Or what does the end look like? What if you're in the middle of figuring everything out?
We're always in the middle. I mean, like, we have, like,
is there an end, I guess?
Yeah, it's, like, a good starting point. But one thing, like, we're really interested in at Crew is building capacity. Because, like I said, these are not the exception to the rule anymore. Like, the plants that need these kind of technologies are becoming the rule. And so we just need more people who are capable of doing this kind of work. So the point of this grant is to try and get plants from all across the country and from all these different species and see if we can standardize this in some way so that it's easier for people. So we can say, hey, just do this one protocol. It works great. We tested it on a bunch of species. Like, right now, plants are so different that, like, species to species, a protocol is different. And, like, genotype to like, tree to tree in the same species, sometimes you'll have to, like, do a different protocol. And that's really labor-intensive, and it's hard to, like, tell someone how to do that.
Right.
So we also, as part of this grant, and like our prior grants, we've been working on this for a while, have the Exceptional Plant Conservation Network, which is actually hosted on the zoo's website, but, like, I feel like no one ever, like, sees it.
Well, I guess we don't have reasons to go on the website too often, so I will say I haven't personally seen it. But.
Yeah, we're trying to make, like, a little hub for, like, learning about these things. So we're gonna have all these videos up there that are like, how do I do this really specific type of cryopreservation, or, like, what is an exceptional plant, like, all different kinds of, like, learning levels for these videos from all different people that we've had make them for us. Some, like, tutorial videos that we've made on our own, and we have all these tools that we're building. So we have, like, a list of exceptional plants. You can go, like, look up your favorite plant species and see if it's an exceptional species or not, or if we don't know enough about it. We have, like, a network people can join. So, like, we have, like, scientists from all across the world, like, joining this network, but also just people who, like, think this kind of work is cool and, like, I want to be in the loop. They, like, join the network too. So we're trying to, like, build capacity here so that more people can be doing this work.
That's so important, honestly. Like, the point, you guys are doing so much trial and error, and it takes a while to grow and know, like, I'm sure how successful all of these projects are. So if you do find one, and you can take that off your plate and be like, here, somebody else, so here's how you do it, and they can do it. I mean, that's really important.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's amazing.
What would the process look like moving forward as far as getting other institutions involved? Because, like you said, it is such a specialized thing. Like, is this something that maybe other institutions could come and train here and then take it back to their place? Like,
and we do that. We do it. We host a lot of people. So, like, this past year, we hosted a botanist from the Canadian Forest Service who, like, came down to train with us and learn cryopreservation. We had our last major grant was working with the University of Hawaii Arboretum, and they have, like, this awesome collection of tissue culture plants. But tissue culture plants, just like any plant, like, they need to be repotted occasionally. They run out of, like, the nutrients and sugar in their gel. And so somebody, like, a person literally has to come in and, like, cut off the bottom and, like, make the media and put them in a new tube, and it's kind of labor intensive. Whereas cryopreservation, once you get the method worked out, it's in the liquid nitrogen bank. You don't have to touch it. There's, like, no, work involved. And so Hawaii was like, we really need to get a cryo bank going, both for safety reasons and for, like, our own sanity. So we can, like, take some of the workload off. And so we trained one of their biologists there, and he's now back in Hawaii, like, running their own cryobank. We did a bunch of protocols for him to jumpstart them for different species they have. We sent them the protocols. We have a bunch of plants banked here, and now they're banking them and developing their own protocols. So it works. It's just, like, it's just us right now, and so it's, like, hard to, like, plod along, but we're chipping away at it.
It sounds to me like you need to just go to Hawaii, help out there.
Totally.
I think that'd be a great trip.
How did I get employed on a grant from Hawaii and I never got to go?
It's educational. You'd be helping them out, right?
I know.
This
Next
is
time.
such interesting information and work that you guys are doing.
I'm always these are some of my favorite. I love all of our podcasts that we do, but some of my favorite episodes are the people when they come over from crew. I'm like, it's definitely. Like you said, it's like science fiction that's going on over there. It's right across the zoo, and I'm clueless to most of it. Like, I need to get more educated on all this stuff. I love, like, crawling
out of our little cave and socializing with people.
And I think it's amazing that there is a network of people who are just interested in this. They may not be scientists because, like Mark and I, we work here at one of the only places in the world doing this kind of work, and we didn't know. So I think it's really impressive that other people are actually aware of it. But after this podcast, maybe at least 50 more people will be aware of it. I don't know how many listen. But no. So is there anything else you wanted to tell us about the work you do, or you want people to hear about Crew or Oaks or anything before we do trivia? Is there anything we missed covering?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground. I probably just talked at you. I hope I didn't bore everyone to tears.
That's my favorite type when you guys have like stories to share, and like you gave us a lot of really good examples that helps me understand at least.
Definitely, I'm right there with you. And
fun.
like we were saying earlier, I love being able to shine the light a little bit on the botanical garden side of the zoo
Yeah.
because it doesn't get as much
accredited
credit.
now.
We weren't before. I didn't know.
Well, there wasn't really an accreditation process,
Okay.
but now there is, and we were like, we're doing it.
Yes, of
Of course, heck yeah.
I also think it's interesting that you mentioned you love, like, the plant scientists love working with horticulture, and they're, like, so different but so similar, and, like, need to be integrated, but, like, it is a totally different job. Like, they have, like, well, I don't know what you would call them. I was going to say big, like, healthy, already growing plants and planting them, but there's so much more to it than that.
They're
So
like
I shouldn't
the
even say
masters
that.
of, like, growing the plants, like, out in real life. And
you guys are, like, the reproductive side of it? Would you say that?
Yeah, the reproductive and, like, the storage and, like, the research side of it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely research, of course.
But, like, we love working with Hort.
Yeah.
It's, like, so much fun. And they're, like, a fun group of people.
They are.
They're
And
always a good time.
I do think it makes sense that it would be fun to work together because you're actually getting to see something that you worked on for so long be implemented into like nature.
Yeah, they actually grow the plants. It's cool.
Very cool. So do you have trivia?
Well, I'll say I do have brief trivia for both of you if you're
Already
up for
embarrassed.
it. Yeah. If you
I will be bad at it.
There's only like one actual question and then two kind of joke questions. So we got a brief trivia today. The first one, you did mention there's lots of different oak species out there. There's lots of work to be done. Do you know how many species of oaks there are? And I'll take like a range for this one because depending on the different sources and the different kind of scientific papers you look at, there might be a couple different answers, but it's all within the kind of range.
Wow, that's like a hard question.
Jenna, these are your favorite types of questions.
Oh, yeah.
How many are there?
He's being sarcastic. I never know the numbers questions.
I feel like I should know this, and I just like my mind is blank. I'm gonna say I don't know, between 800 and 900.
Really?
I don't know. It's just a guess.
I usually guess really high, but I was going to guess like 40.
So it's right in between the two of you. It's about,
A little bit of a range there.
We'll find the median there. Okay. It's about 450 to 500.
Of just oaks.
450 to 500, just oaks.
I don't understand
Just
life.
double.
There's almost 100 just in the United States alone. Yeah.
What? I didn't know there were that many species of trees in general.
Oh my god!
I mean, that's
so many.
Being a little
facetious.
Yes,
yeah,
but
yeah.
like, what? Wow. Just oaks. Yeah, because
That's
I
crazy.
think bur oak is one like I might have been able to name, and then red oak sounds familiar to me.
Yeah.
But that's it. Like I wouldn't. What's another? Can you name any more? Like even just one more. I want to know
white
if
oak.
Okay, yeah, I guess I know that. But I wouldn't have thought of it, right? Like it just sounds.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've heard that sometime when you say it out loud. But
Now you
400
gotta
of
go out
those?
and start identifying oaks.
I know. I can't even. There's a lot of plants I cannot identify.
So speaking of white oaks, this is a good little segue here. Speaking of white oaks, in this 1994 film, a white oak is the meeting place for two prisoners that escaped the prison.
Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
That's the
you
only
got it, you got it.
movie I know.
Shawshank.
I don't remember the scene.
Shawshank. Andy
yeah.
leaves the like the toolbox or whatever underneath the white oak. Yeah, which I didn't know this until I was researching this. That white oak was until it fell down. Was in Ohio.
Oh.
Yeah, that was
They
filmed
filmed
in
the
Ohio.
whole thing. Yeah, the
Yeah.
Mansfield Reformatory.
I had no idea. Like,
It's so cool.
yeah, incredible. One of the best movies ever. And it was filmed right here in Ohio. So
Yeah.
we're repping. All right, you guys are actually doing really good here. You're 2 for 2. I'm giving you credit for 2 for 2 because the answer for the oak species
Between
was
the
right
two
in the
of
middle.
us, we
Yeah,
got
it
it.
was right in the middle. So I'm giving you credit for 2 for 2.
I agree.
Last question. This was like an extremely formative experience for me growing up. If you've ever played any of the Pokemon games, Pokemon Red, Yellow, Blue, when you start out your journey, what is the name of the character that acts as your guide through the world?
The only
We don't have Pokemon fans here, I guess.
Professor Oak. I'm
Professor
a
Oak!
huge Pokemon fan.
Okay, thank God.
Oh, I was like, the only one I know is Pikachu, I think.
It's not
Kind of your
Not
guy.
Pikachu's
Like your
Pokemon Yellow,
spiritual
yeah.
advisor.
Oh my gosh. That's ridiculous.
Professor Oak, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Maybe that's like some kernel of my psyche of like being 12 years old and playing Pokemon has led me to this point. You just like uncovered it. This is my psychotherapy session.
That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here for. Megan, you're like our spiritual Professor Oak, though, if you think about it.
I would be happy to be that way.
I don't know what that means, but yes.
I will get you your first Pokemon.
It's a compliment. Jenna, do you have anything else for Megan while we have her?
Yes, well, I love all of the work you do. What can I do?
Yeah, there's so many things that you can do, but I think a really fun thing that you can do, especially to support oak conservation, is like to grow oaks in your backyard if you can. So I have a bur oak growing in my backyard, and I think it's like a primary reason that I bought my house is like, I love this tree. Like, I want to buy this house.
Have you loved oaks before this grant, before this project?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
How could you not? Like, if you go out in our forest, they're like such a dominant tree. It's just like,
They're very like charismatic
lovable.
trees.
Yeah. They totally are. But you can you can purchase oaks, or you can go and collect acorns. Like, they're actually fairly easy to germinate. You can
Really?
just look up instructions online. They just don't last
Yeah,
very long. So they're an exceptional species, so you want to germinate them pretty quick when you actually collect them. But you can also grow all kinds of, if you don't have room for oaks, you can grow all kinds of like native plants. So we have so many native plants that will support our native pollinators and ecosystems that you can grow. But a really important thing to be aware of when you're growing these plants is where you're getting them from and making sure that you're sourcing them ethically. So a lot of these plants in the wild, you know, if there's demand for them and we haven't quite figured out how to propagate them yet, sometimes people will go like dig them up from the wild, and that could actually harm native populations, and it would probably lower your success rate because transplanting plants can be really hard. So I would say, like, when you're going and buying native plants, like, start asking a lot of questions about how they source their plants. Where are these plants coming from? What's their origin? How are you propagating them? You're not harming, any native ecosystems. You're stealing from the wild or like poaching, because poaching definitely happens here in Ohio.
Yeah.
Is there like a certain place that you would, like, you say ask the questions, but would it be like you go to a nursery, or could even Lowe's, or somewhere where people might see trees that they could buy? Like, is there something that says that they're like ethically sourced, or you would have to ask and hope the person you're asking knows the answer?
Well,
that's what I would worry about.
Yeah, I know. My two
like...
answers to that. One is that you can go to a lot of nurseries around here, especially, and they're like our Cincinnati Zoo plants that horticulture will kind of like
I didn't know that.
back.
Okay.
So you'll actually see like Cincinnati Zoo like little stickers on them.
Like a
Very
stamp
cool.
of approval,
Yeah,
basically.
like the horticulture like signed off on it. So those are usually good ones, and there's a lot of natives too, like a lot of cool cultivars of natives that you can grow.
That's interesting you say that, because I have the hardest time finding native plants. Like,
I know they're getting more popular
okay,
now.
it's been a while since, like, at my past house, like, I was specifically looking for native plants and would go to nurseries, and it was still hard to find them.
But I think like the other thing that you could do is go to local nurseries, like smaller mom and pop shops than like the giant like Lowe's, Walmart, like those places, because you can actually talk to the people who are growing the plants a lot of time, or sourcing the plants, and a lot of times they have more buy-in, and especially if people are coming and asking these questions, then it's going to be more and more important for them to showcase like, hey, we're getting these plants totally ethically. Like, we're nowhere in the line are these being poached or anything. Like, this is the place that you should buy your plants at. And you're supporting, like, a local economy.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. There's so many good things about all of that. I kind of meant for this to be the last question, but now I have more questions. Do you know, is there anything like a specific habitat or soil or amount of space that someone would need to grow an oak tree?
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially like space. They're usually, the oak trees that we have around here are large trees.
And so if like you start, like you buy them small, or you start them off as an acorn, like does somebody need like a 20 by 20 foot area? They imagine like the roots would somewhat take up, or at some point take up, or do you know? Like, is that a? I don't know if you know that question. That
I
answer.
have like a postage stamp backyard, and I still have an oak tree growing in it. So like my backyard is probably like, oh, I don't know. I'm so bad at like judging feet, but it's like not a very. It's not a very big. It's like large enough for me to have like an oak tree and like a swing set, and that's it.
Okay.
All the essentials, honestly.
Yeah, who needs anything else? You just like put the swing on the oak tree, and then I've got like double the space.
Yes.
But I would say if you can't, like, if you don't have the space for an oak tree, like any kind of native plants are good. I'll always like push people to grow pawpaw trees because they're my own personal like favorite native tree, and they produce a very delicious fruit in the fall that you can eat as well. And they're much smaller. They're like an understory tree.
Okay.
But there are native plants out there for any size backyard and budget. If you look hard enough. And actually horticulture, if you go and look on horticulture's site on the zoo, they have recommendations for like every kind of plant. Every size of space you have, wet, dry conditions. They've done the work.
Okay, so what we need to do is check out the zoo's website because there's way more info on there than I realized.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or would have thought about in the past. And then this is I don't know if you know the answer to this. If somebody plants an acorn, when could they expect to see a sapling? Or so it's going to take a really long time, right? There isn't that reward right away. Do you know?
Usually, if you like collect the acorn like right after it comes off the tree, like within like a couple days of it coming off the tree, and you immediately like germinate it and plant it, it will like start it'll start germinating like really soon.
Okay.
Sometimes if they wait a little bit, then they're going to need what we call a stratification, so they need to go through like a winter, basically, like they would in the ground, right? So they would just like go through like 3 months of winter. I just chuck them in the freezer or in the fridge and they like come out and wake up and they're ready to go. But oak trees, again, they're exceptional species. They don't last very long. So they usually, if they're going to germinate, they'll usually germinate pretty quick.
Okay. Yeah, just imagine it would start growing, but you may not even notice it. Like, it would,
yeah.
I mean, it's
like
a
6
year
years later,
like a
like,
foot.
oh my god, what is that?
Okay, well, do you have anything else?
I got nothing. I think I speak for all of us when no disrespect, I say I'm glad that you didn't pursue a career in fashion.
Yeah.
I'm glad fashion did not work out for you.
You know, it wasn't. It wasn't for me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
We appreciate all the work you do.
Thanks for having me. This was really
of course.
fun.
This is great.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
for your time. All those listeners, like Jenna said, check out the zoo's website for the exceptional plant list.
Yeah.
For some recommendations for horticulture and what to plant. Do you have any other plugs? Check out Crew. Crew's got a big link on the website if you're really interested to learn more.
Cincinnati Zoo stickers at local nurseries.
Yeah, and like contact us. I love to like hear from people and hear what people are doing and hear people's ideas, and if they want to work together, like I'd love to hear from people.
Okay, can they find your information on the website?
Yeah,
okay.
Usually, or like go through the zoo and they'll usually like direct it to me if they contact.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. Thanks for all your work. Thanks for spending some time talking to us and educating us.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm embarrassing myself as usual. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great day.